Hey everybody, so today I wanted to talk about the film Alita Battle Angel and give my honest constructive criticism of the one thing that I honestly feel would take the cohesiveness of this film from an 80% to a 90% by itself. And that is, Grewishka should have killed Alita. No, not that Grewishka, not that Grewishka, and not that Grewishka. This Grewishka. And no, not that Alita, not that Alita, or this Alita. This Alita. This is the Alita Grishka should have killed. And honestly, when I saw the film for the first time, I thought he did. I thought this was Grewishka. I just found it odd that for the rest of the film they made no mention of it. But I love this film, so I went with it. Here's what should have happened, and in the words of Robert Rodriguez, I'm not gonna rewrite him, I'm going to edit him. Robert Rodriguez did a phenomenal job with this film. There's just a few minor tweaks that needed to be made to really make this film perfect. And this, to me, is the absolute biggest, most glaring one that, like I say, would have made up at least 10 percentage points from an 80% to a 90%, if not more than that. So here's what should have happened. Starting here, after the first encounter with Grewishka, all the way through this scene, nothing changes. This is still Casper Van Dien, except instead of playing some random cyborg named Amok, he's playing young Grewishka. To me, the dead giveaway in the film that that's who this was is this face right here. Compare that to the face Grewishka makes right before Alita kicks his arm off in the first fight, and you'll see a very similar looking face. It would be completely understandable to say that this was simply an older version who has been heavily augmented along with the rest of his body. I'm assuming about 10 years have passed since his daughter's death, just how it's referred to in the film. I'm assuming about 10 years. It could be a little bit more than that, but it's certainly understandable to say that this and this are the same person. One has been augmented, the other has not been. It's also perfectly excusable for younger actors to play younger versions of other actors. That happens all the time in film. So that part isn't a problem. You don't have to reshoot this scene at all. The dialogue is exactly the same. Ito never tells Alita that it was Grewishka. He still refers to him as a previous patient. So he's withholding information from Alita that is pretty important. And that is right in line with the rest of this film's theme with Ito and Alita's relationship. He is sheltering her from this very dangerous world, trying to protect her, and withholding this kind of information is right in line with his character in this film. Again, nothing about this scene has changed. Nothing leading up to this scene has changed. And for the most part, nothing coming after this about the film is going to change. So let's get to that part. Here we are, after the bar fight scene, in the underworld. This is where things are going to change. And what's going to change isn't actually anything that physically happens, but rather what is said. So Grewishka opens up just like he did with the "Welcome to the underworld, my world, it's where I grew up," Alita says, "and it's where you're going to die," that all the same. This whole thing happens. The fight progresses as it does. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. Keep in mind, at this point, Alita still does not know Grewishka is the one who killed Ito's daughter, Alita. She doesn't know any of this at this point. She just knows Grewishka as the street punk who tried to kill them earlier and has been threatening and murdering innocent people. The fight progresses just as we see on film, and Alita is behind the pillar. This is where dialogue changes. All I'm changing here is the dialogue that is said. Now, I'm going to be going off the top of my head here for the dialogue, but I've seen this film enough times that I've pretty much got it memorized. Grewishka says in the film, "I was begotten here to rot, but I was saved by the same hand that shapes your destiny even now." To which Alita responds, "Whose hand?" "My master, Nova." To which she responds again, "What do you know about me?" That is what is said in the film. Now I am changing this, and it's going to get longer by a few minutes. Grewishka is going to go into a monologue when he says, "I was begotten here to rot, but I was saved by the same hand that shapes your destiny even now. And it's going to go to a flashback, nearly identical format to what happened when Ito was telling the story of his daughter's murder. Okay, same format, where Grewishka is talking and we're seeing things happen, but also in the flashback, people are talking, and it's all stitched together seamlessly. I don't have that part down. I do know the gist of what needs to be said, and it is as follows. Grewishka says, I was begotten here to rot, but I was saved by the same hand that shapes your destiny even now, my master Nova. Now, the flashback that's going to happen is as follows. So, previous flashback, we saw Ito kill Grewishka, what he really did. And that's where Grewishka's flashback picks up. We see Ito walk away as Grewishka is fading out into consciousness, and Ito has, say, taken his hammer and pushed his mutilated, burned torso down into the underworld, and Grewishka is falling, ends up in rubble. He is bleeding out. He is not going to last more than another hour or two. So he is laying in the scrap heap in the underworld, in a pile of rubble in the underworld. Ito has left him for dead. We see a young Vector walk up, and Vector says, I found him, to which we hear Nova's voice in Vector's earpiece. Yes, he's definitely the one. Vector looks at Grewishka and says, looks like Nova wants to give you a second chance. You work for me now, and gets this cynical grin on his face, just like we've seen throughout the rest of the film. Grewishka essentially has a look of relief, but he is way too spent. He is on death's door. That is the flashback that happens intertwined with what Grewishka is saying. Alita is still behind the pillar at this point. Again, nothing that physically happens in this scene has changed. I have simply added a couple minutes of dialogue. Okay, so back to this scene. Alita says, what do you know about me? And Grewishka scoffs and chuckles and says, I know you're a lot more fun this time around without that wheelchair. At which point we see Alita's eyes twitch and she is processing everything she has just heard, in many ways complete shock. This is the first time she has heard any of this information. She's heard the story that Ito told her. She heard everything Grewishka said, and she flips out. Quite literally, actually. We see the exact same thing that happens in the film as Grewishka shoots the grind cutters. She dives into the grind cutters, now enraged at Grewishka that much more that this beast of a cyborg would have the audacity to do this, to even exist. Whereas in the film, it's just kind of random that she goes into the grind cutters. It's not what we can see. It's not well thought out. It's very short-sighted. This gives her a reason for that short-sightedness. It justifies it. So now we get to here, and Alita is on the ground. We go into another monologue where Grewishka expresses resentment towards Ito about how he was going to be a champion, the best the game had ever seen, and Ito threw him away like a piece of garbage. And now that you're here, I know exactly how to make Ito pay. I'm going to take from him everything, just like he took everything from me. He picks Alita up, and she is screaming, just like in the film, exactly in the film, except that she says, it was you. You killed Alita. You killed Ito's daughter. To which Grewishka responds, this time I'm going to show some mercy. I'm going to turn you into a living pendant to adorn my chest, so I can hear your screams every moment of the day, pleading for mercy, just like in the film, except now it's justified that much more. Okay? Alita's impulsiveness is justified, and making a brash decision that wasn't that well thought out. Grewishka's mercy is further reinforced by this atrocious act which he committed and is proud of. He expresses great resentment towards Ito for not making him the champion that he thought he could be, and Ito abandons Maybe that dream because of the drugs, things like that. Perhaps Grewishka got involved in the same wreck that Joshigan was involved in, and Ed were involved in. Perhaps Grewishka was involved in that same wreck. Now, we don't know any of that. We're not showing any of that. We wouldn't be showing any of that until the sequel. We just know that there's some event that turned Grewishka to drugs seeking revenge, kills Ito's daughter. Ito goes and kills him. Not technically, he leaves him for dead. And this whole thing comes together in just a few lines of dialogue. The scenes have not changed. The physical events have not changed. Nothing has changed. Alita now knows why Ito knows about Grewishka other than the fact that he's just some random cyborg. It becomes quite clear why Grewishka would want to get back at Ito, and specifically through Alita, for resentment for how Ito is treating her with such kindness and respect. Nothing has changed about this film. We've added maybe, 5 minutes to the total runtime? Grewishka goes from being a random cyborg, junkyard punk, to this incredibly big bad with deep ties to Ito and perhaps years of pursuing him in some fashion, seeking revenge. We build Vector and Nova up a little bit more. During this monologue, he would also say something to the effect of, Nova made me Grewishka. Nova gave me the power I desired. As long as I did a deed or two from time to time, I was free to roam however I please, and now I know exactly how to make Ito pay. You add layer upon layer upon layer of quality to this story without changing anything, and it becomes that much more impactful and that much more cohesive, simply by linking everything together. And what I mean by nothing changes in this scene is exactly this. Young Grewishka. There. All better. I didn't know the first time I saw this film that wasn't Grewishka. In fact, I didn't know any of the times I went back to see this film that wasn't Grewishka. I did find it odd that they never mentioned it again. But it wasn't until this article came out on, I think it was Screen Rant, mentioning the supporting cast, that it was Casper Van Dien who killed Ito's daughter. And I said, okay, fine, they get a younger guy to play young Grewishka, that's fine. Young Grewishka who hasn't been augmented yet heavily. And then I see it's a completely different cyborg. I said, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you add another character to this film? It's got so much going on as it is. Remove one of those characters, check. You've built Grewishka up even further, check. You've linked Grewishka, Ito, and Alita together that much more. You've built Vector and Nova up even further. We hear Nova's voice, which, okay, one line and a face from Edward Norton, but so what? He's still a mystery. The only thing I would add as part of this change is after Ito puts Alita into the Berserker body, they have a couple lines of dialogue about how Ito should have told Alita about Grewishka. No more secrets anymore. You can live your own life. I support you in your choices. Something to that effect. That's it. That one change would have tied this whole film together that much better. Like I say, going from an 80% easily to a 90%, if not maybe a 92% in terms of its overall cohesiveness. Now, there's about a dozen or better other changes that would need to happen that would add probably 20 minutes to the runtime of the film, but this has added maybe 5 minutes to the runtime of the film. Maybe 5 minutes. Few lines of dialogue. The scenes themselves have not changed. The cast has not changed. We've replaced in the credits the word amok with young Grewishka, and this film is going to flow that much better. Everything that happens is that much more impactful. Because one, Grewishka is no longer a random junkyard punk. Two, he has now a legitimate reason to be after Ito and Alita. There's a legitimate reason that Ito would know about him, other than just he's a hunter warrior. There is a legitimate reason for Alita to drop her guard, go berserk, diving into the grind cutters, make a brash decision like that. And it also further reinforces the conflict between Ito and Alita just a little bit more. of he was withholding information from her, trying to protect her this whole time. And it led to her demise. So Ito's reaction is that much more justified, that this monster I created, who I thought I killed, I did not, is now coming to take the last person I have to care about. That's it. I just want to say that I don't want anybody to think this takes away from my appreciation of the film. This was one of the first things I noticed. The second thing was that Hugo's crime should have been jacking cyborgs, not murder. Sapan can still kill the cyborg they were jacking and all that, but to say his crime was murder and not jacking cyborgs makes no sense. But yeah, again, something that adds zero time to the film. A quick change in dialogue. Events are all the same. Progression is all the same. The story has not changed. The core ideologies have not changed. Nothing has changed. I love this film with all my heart. That's why I did this constructive criticism. That's what this is. Robert Rodriguez did a phenomenal job as a director on his first massive budget film. I would defend his job on this film against any critic any day. I love this film. It is my second all-time favorite film behind Pixar's The Incredibles. And I don't love this film because it's a perfect film. I love this film because it chose to tell a meaningful story that is so rare to see in Hollywood. And Robert Rodriguez did it so well. And the dynamic between Rosa and Christoph Waltz's character is so spot on. It truly does sell and carry this movie. It is beautiful. And for anybody who hasn't seen this, please go watch it. It is not a perfect film. I would never assert that it was a perfect film. It was perfect for me because it did everything I want to see in a film, but that doesn't mean it wasn't shaky. This is just one way to clean it up, to get rid of the shakiness, without changing anything. Like I said in the beginning, I'm going to edit Robert Rodriguez. I'm not going to change anything. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it went maybe a little long, but it's just one of those things that's been weighing on my mind, and I thought with the second anniversary coming up that this would be a perfect time to talk about it. So that's all I have for today. Have a great day, everybody.